outlook of Finance Bill 2023 that was tabled in Parliament yesterday, according to me, is very devastating and is showing that we still have some time to revolve against the problem. There is a problem with us as a country, and there is a problem with our budget. If we are floating a 3.6 trillion budget, and out of that, 2.5 is supposed to go to recurrent expenditure. And that means to go to paying people's salaries. You cannot tax everyone and everything to pay people's salaries. We have a problem with that. And however long, it doesn't matter how we are going to define our problem. But if we don't recognize that what goes into development is a very small fraction of our GDP, then we have a problem. Welcome to the Bold Analysis. I want us to look at this factor in details, and I will show you why we're in a paralysis and we're just revolving around a problem that may not be solved today. As much as Musalia Mudavadi is saying the economy will be stable in the next 2 years, I've had a breakdown here, and I want us to go to look at this chart here. I've just made it for you. I want us to have some bit of, I did a breakdown on what exactly the finance bill looks like. The Treasury floated a 3.6 trillion budget, and this is the budget for 2023-2024, and the target for KRA outlined according to what is in that budget is 2.8 trillion. Now, what that means here is we have around 8 billion deficit that is needed for us to meet this budget. What does that tell you? What that tells you here is, for us to get that, there are two sources of government revenue. One of them is taxes, the other one is loans. So whether domestic or international loans from international market, but it's loans. So what that means is, what is remaining here, we'll still have to go back to our debt traps and still look for some loans. But then, I wanted to look at the outlook of the taxes. There is a 500, those who are earning more than 500,000 Kenyan shillings, and I need to say that this group is very few, they are the minority. The pay as you earn has been increased by 5%, so they are going to pay 35% deduction of their pay as you earn. Now, I want to believe that these are not the hustlers. I think these are not hustlers. These are upper class. Now, anyone earning below 500,000, the pay is going to remain 30%. So this is the rate. Now, there is something I need to tell you about this. I was just doing my research, and I realized there are countries like Japan, Germany, where the pay is at the tune of even 50. But you cannot compare those countries to Kenya in respect to the quality of life, or rather the quality of services. Like, you realize that their education is covered and healthcare. There is a bit of how it is advanced. And at this point, I want to ask someone who is not in the country, someone who is abroad, in which country you are, what is the rate of pay in your country? I don't know if I'm getting that. Pay as you earn. What is the rate? The relative, what is the percentage of the basic salary? What percentage of basic salary is your pay as you earn? I'll be so much interested in it. Now, apart from this, the NSSF and NHF deductions have been revised upwards. So, this, irrespective of how much, there is those who are earning, I think the cadre has been changed from 330 all to 300,000, all to around 27,000. So apart from this, these are statutory deductions. And there is something I need to tell you about this. In the last 2 years, only 2% of non-employed population are paying this. So for those who are in formal employment, of course, this is deducted automatically. So they automatically pay it. For the people in the informal jobs, the watu mjengo, you'll realize that the data was showing that only 2% are consistent in paying. So what does that tell you? That tells you that even when it was 500, people are not still paying. So this uptake, as far as it is being seen as a way of increasing, but there is the reason here. And people are arguing, experts are arguing that while we are increasing NSSF and NHIF, of course NSSF is a pension scheme, NHIF, the deductions have been increased, but does it really help us solve the health burden, financing burden, or it is just one way of getting money so that we can borrow money locally? It's a point. The digital, this is where you also caught up with us, 15%. And for people in the YouTube space, there is also a deduction from the US. So influencers and the other marketers, online marketers, 15%. Newly, the hair, 5%. Phones, 10%. Then there is another mandatory 3% housing deduction. This is 3,000 Kenyan shillings approximately on those that goes to affordable housing. Then one of the reasons why there is a bit of this taxation is, if you look at this budget, the salaries have been shrinking. They're not improving because the country is yet to recover from the effects of COVID-19. We want to create a pool for domestic borrowing so that we can shy away from the foreign debts. And also a bit of this is going to help in debt servicing and the cost of living. So one of the cries has been that we are overtaxing, and there are a lot of deductions that are going to be taken. For example, I just did some simple calculation. Do you know that someone earning 70,000 can get home with, after all these deductions and pay, that person can get home with around 71,000. This person earning 71,000 has a high dependency ratio. That's normally a big problem, especially for firstborns like us. I can tell you, it's not going to be very easy. And those who say that it's a lot of work in it. So I want us to look at this in details, because I'll show you why we are revolving around the problem. And it doesn't look like we are going to solve this problem today. Now let me share with you something here. Economic recovery template is one of the principles in it is to reduce the foreign borrowing so that we can borrow locally, number one, because the other foreign loans, they're being said to be attracting very huge interest and the principle, apart from the principle. But I listened to Ndii who was saying that domestic loan and foreign loans standing at 50-50. The current percentage for the loans that are taking now for the Kenyan banks is around 12%. In fact, according to him, we are even having bit of the local loans are even becoming more expensive than those foreign loans. But those who are saying that we want to recover the economy are still opening the borrowing gaps. There may not be, people may not have a problem. But understand this, we have removed subsidies, and subsidies were shock absorbers after the effects of COVID-19. The inflation remains on a double digit, that is the 10 and moving, and we've also withdrawn other services while counties still remain crippled. So, as far as I am not an economist, but we're just trying to make what is being said in the political space. Is it really going to help us solve the problem? I want to show you something. If we are not going to address these four things, these four devils, let me call them devils. If you're not going to address these ones, then we are going to revolve around this problem. And sadly, we may not solve it. One thing, the first one is a bloated payroll. We have a payroll that is very bloated. Look at the 50 CAS. Because the challenge here is, out of 3.6 trillion, we are going to take 2.5 trillion for recurrent expenditure. Then are we collecting taxes just to pay salaries? Why don't we work on how we can harmonize or rather scale down the payroll? If we cannot solve that, and I can tell you, even next year, we still give people jobs on political expediency, personal misfortunes, then we'll still be forced to float such a huge budget. And the challenge here is we have money that we are paying salaries and allowances and everything. When will Kenya grow from, when will we have money that ourselves as a country, we can set aside and say, we have that resource, for example, there is oil in Turkana, we can take money from treasury, pump there, and exploit and invest, explore that. So that we can have value addition of our resources here and export. If all the money we're going to have, a very big fraction of our GDP will go to recurrent expenditure. If there was something that I think the economic advisors, and that's why yesterday I said that some of these things are bordering actually incompetency. If there is something that these elite economic advisors should actually tell William Ruto to find ways of devising, is to scale down our recurrent expenditure. The two offices just exhausted their budget the other day. I just saw the budget for travel and local, foreign and local travel. A very huge budget. I must appreciate that William Ruto's State House budget has been reduced. I think that's a good gesture. So if we cannot solve this, we don't mean well for this country. Number two, if we must close and we must diminish our appetite for the foreign debts. We said we want to live within our means. Let me tell you, we have a budget of 3.6 trillion with an estimated collection of 2.8 trillion. There is a culture due to these disruptions, and William Ruto must learn this from last experience, that KRA, due to these disruptions, did not meet its financial obligations this financial year. Take, for example, it doesn't also meet it. That means that we shall have a huge deficit that will force us to go deeper and deeper. So, are we going to still borrow? And again, if Kenyan, if we are increasing the taxes on payroll, we are still raiding the payroll, what is remaining for the employed workers to pay their loans? Think about it. So that means that even the loan uptake and repayment, we run the risk of defaulting locally or low uptake of loans, and loan in one of the huge products that banks are actually trading with. So without that, if the more we raid the payroll, we are also affecting the local banks. And if you affect the local banks, then are they going to be friendly to borrow to the government? That means we still go back to the international market. Very expensive loans with a lot of conditions. By the way, the problem with, for example, the problem with the IMF is not that the loan is not helping, but they have a lot of conditions and a lot of guidelines on how you're using that loan, irrespective of whether it's hurting the mwananchi or not. So if we cannot seal that debt, the appetite for debt, then we'll still be having the problems of not paying counties, restructuring how we pay civil servants, and still revolve around the problem. We must get it right if William Ruto really wants to. Number three, corruption is still a problem. And I want to give this very good example. NHIF. Under the NHIF, just recently a case against, I think the former some leader there, some director there, was dropped. There was 1.1 billion. There was the 400 million on the, I think, police insurance. Before that was moved from NHIF to some, is it from one bank to CIC? So those are challenges that are going on. Some of this money, major part of this money that we are collecting, the problem is not on collection, the problem is on expenditure. If we cannot seal corruption, and one thing that Ruto has remained mum about is corruption. Doesn't mean the fact that media is not reporting doesn't mean that it's not there. It is still a problem, but we've decided to sugarcoat it. If we can't face corruption head-on, we still revolve around this. Lastly, the way you are reading the payroll, we are hurting the purchasing power. So I don't know how our manufacturing will work without the purchasing power, because the more manufacturing, the more there is purchasing power, manufacturing will then blossom. And when the manufacturers can manufacture more goods, that's when they're going to absorb more people and create jobs. So that vicious circle, poverty circle, will probably still be with us here. And if we don't accompany all these suggestions, if the finance bill is passed the way it is, and it is not accompanied by non-monetary policy measures, I can tell you, we still revolve around the problem. That's my take.